The last 2 weeks have taken a really unfortunate turn. Trust me, it'll help you in the long run if you treat people as humans and not just as a lease and a cash flow stream at this time. This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odum and Steven Silverman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odum, flying solo for this one episode. We've had a number of requests from clients and also from listeners to talk a little bit about what we're doing with our tenants in our plazas, in our offices, and the industrial parks. And so this is I think that this discussion, while residential folks might be able to take some pieces of information out of this, it's really going to be directed more at the commercial related folks. They're going to be a different set of laws on dealing with your residential folks. And there's a little bit more intricacy and nuance in dealing with your commercial folks who tend to be with you for, multiple years, more complicated leases, different laws in terms of eviction and handling of those tenants and whatnot. But I still think there's some tie over here that we can discuss. Listen, guys, it's tough. The last 2 weeks have taken a really unfortunate turn. There's a lot of people that are frightened, rightfully so, not only for themselves, but for their businesses and their families. How the future is going to look is very unclear for some of these folks. And I think most importantly, we're in this business to make a profit. Not us necessarily. Yes, we are, but you as landlords, you're in the business because you're wanting to make a profit. But if you're going to look at this only from a financial aspect, you're missing not only an opportunity to try to forge better relationships with your tenants, your customers, because they are your customers, but you're also perhaps going to be looking at a vacant plaza. You've got to try to look at this from a human aspect. Sit down with your clients or call them on the phone, go visit them and get eyeball to eyeball with them, even keep your safe distance, your social distance space you're supposed to. But, maybe you want to see them because you want to be able to look them in the eye and see their body language. But just let them know that you care about them. Forget about their business for a moment and the fact that they pay you rent. These guys are, many of them, your nail salon, your barber, your chiropractor, whoever it is that you have in your centers, your small industrial distributor, it doesn't really matter. These guys are on an island, these guys and gals, and their employees are scared and they're having to provide leadership and they're having to keep a stiff upper lip for their families. It's challenging for them. They need somebody to be able to commiserate with and feel their pain. And it'll go a long way just being human and talking to them and letting them talk through some of their issues. Trust me, it'll help you in the long run if you treat people as humans and not just as a lease and a cash flow stream at this time. Having said that, obviously, there are some issues, very real issues for you also as landlords and investors. You're worried about paying your bank. You're worried about what's going to happen there. We've seen already some of our investors go to their banks. Again, it's about lines of communication to have the same conversation your tenant's having with you. Listen, I have some challenges. 30%, 40% of the tenants in my plaza are service related. They're closed. They're not going to be able to pay March rent. I need to be able to get an idea of what you guys, meaning the bank, can do for us. How are you going to approach this? How are you going to address this? We've immediately seen some folks that have already been able to get interest only on their loans. I'm sure the banks are having conversations about this now. Communicate with your banker too and tell them what's going on and be upfront with them, just like you're wanting the lines of communication to be open with your tenants. Typically what happens with these individuals that are entrepreneurs inside of your office building or your retail center is they're so overwhelmed by their day and just running their business, and now they get this entire virus situation dumped on them, and they don't know where to start. So the first thing they do is come to you, the landlord, to try to help them through this situation. What we're talking to our clients about is there are other ways that a tenant can get help. First of all, the state of Florida has a small business program. It's interest-free loan for a year. The SBA just included Florida on their deal. You can also go back and have them go through their insurance policy. There's an outside chance that perhaps the business continuation insurance, the force majeure clause that might be, we'll talk about in a minute, and as part of the insurance, might help them, but have them talk to their insurance agents and help walk them through the process and see if there's anything that's available for them. Also, like I said, the SBA and the state of Florida are both offering assistance for small businesses. And when they're asking you for assistance, tell them about those things, maybe even prepare a flyer. I'd be happy to share ours with you if you want to see it, where it has the links and all the ideas about where a small business owner, operator might be able to get some assistance from outside just you, because that's the first place they're going to go to. So might as well try to help them help themselves. Okay, so a tenant's come to you and they've asked you for relief. They've asked you to give them some sort of rent reduction. Through the help of Beth Azor, we listened to, she's an advisor over on the East Coast around Fort Lauderdale, Broward County. I believe she's in Broward County. But Beth is great. She does some coaching. If you look her up, Beth Azor, like Azor's, AZOR advisory. She provided us with a form. So when somebody asks, she's giving them a form, and we're going to start incorporating that form into our business too. And the purpose of the form is to walk the tenant through a thought process, a little mini business plan of how they're going to try to cope with this. Obviously, there are a lot of unknowns here, but it gives them the links to the state of Florida, to the SBA. It gives them some of these points on where they want to try to look. And then you're going to want to have them talk about their plan to work through this situation. It helps the tenant to organize their thoughts, and it also takes you off of the focus to handle all of their issues. So it kind of opens the door for that communication. Having said that, if you have a tenant who was delinquent before this crisis hit, you're going to have some difficult decisions to make. You might be throwing good money after bad, because more likely than not, you know your situation is not going to apply to all tenants, but more likely than not, if they are in trouble on March 1 and they still haven't paid their rent, they are probably not going to make it. And you have to make the decision of whether you're going to help or not. You might arrive at the decision that you might as well just go ahead and cut bait. It's better to do so, because you're just going to end up throwing good money after bad. This is a decision that I'm going to put back on you guys. You know your tenants better than I do. You know their situation. You might not even try to entertain options with them. But your tenants that have been loyal to you, have been around for a while, and have tried to work through issues, you're going to want to try to save these people, and you're going to want to try to figure out a way to make it work for them. A lot of these guys, they'll be hustlers, and you can kind of act as a coach for them to make sure that they're doing the right things. And maybe simple things like putting signs out by the road to let them know that they're still open. Some of these plazas, they're 75% of them are shut down, and people drive by and don't realize there's anybody in there. And we've got a produce guy at one of our plazas, and he's alive and well. I mean, people are over there. They still need food. They still need to eat. So he's still providing them service for that. It's still going to be an essential service that he's going to provide. So he's still there and he's still doing business. So talk to him about that. Talk to him about trying to help them through this current situation, which will eventually cease. Local versus national chains. Obviously, the national chains probably have deeper pockets. The franchisees, ask your franchisees, is the franchise, or are they doing anything for them? If they should be doing something. I mean, some of them are giving them franchise rebates, doing some other things. Maybe there might be some other sorts of assistance, but ask them what they're doing there. Maybe you can point them in the right direction if they're franchisors not being particularly helpful or forthcoming. The national chains like the Starbucks of the world and whatnot, this could be an opportunity for them to shed some of their spaces that aren't doing particularly well. And how are they going to do that? Okay. Well, we've already seen it happen with a couple of our clients where they're enacting what's referred to as a force majeure. I'm telling you this because just don't get blindsided when the national tenant comes up and talks about a force majeure. A force majeure is an act of God, usually included in a lease, that allows a tenant to exit a lease in the event of some sort of catastrophe. And this is going to get tested in the courts. We're going to see how far it goes, and it's going to depend on the language. But you're going to see tenants that try to exercise this on some of their lower performing centers. It's an opportunity for them to get out. Don't be caught by surprise. It's probably going to get tied up in the court system for a while. Maybe it won't. Maybe the language is very clean and you might see some of these guys bail out. But don't feel secure. That's the bottom line, that just because you have a national tenant that you're safe, because nobody is safe right now. If this goes, and the longer this goes on, the more pressure there's going to be on everybody across the board here. And you might see some of these better tenants, national tenants bailing. I don't see better because we have a lot of good local tenants too. Eviction and abandonment. In the unlikely event of a default of a lease, or you're considering evicting them, you've already seen some actions by some of the states that are preventing that from occurring on commercial properties. Already a lot on residential, but you're seeing it on commercial properties too. This is something that it probably won't be an issue in the state of Florida. They might surprise me. They might put a moratorium for a couple of months on evictions on a commercial space as well. We'll just have to see. I haven't seen anything come through on legislation right now regarding that. But if it doesn't come through and you're making that consideration about evicting, think very long and hard about that. Think about the carry costs, the lease up costs, the amount of time, which is going to be considerably lengthened now because of this issue, to be able to get space leased again. So let cooler heads prevail. If you're just in a dispute with a tenant, you think you're going to go ahead and evict them, because you might effectively be banned from evicting them anyway. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, when we went through the 2008 crisis, the court system was so jammed up that evictions slowed to a crawl. So if you get out over the skis and trying to remove someone from a space, you might find yourself in a bind, because not only are you not getting paid from the tenant, you don't have a good relationship with them to try to get something out of them. And the court system's just going to be bogged down until the eviction's clear. So think about that carefully before you decide to remove somebody. Some of your poor performing tenants will know they're not going to fight you, and they'll probably, a lot of them, we find, if you tell them they're going to get evicted, they know, and they'll leave. But this is what I'm talking about. The folks that maybe are on that edge, or maybe a little bit bitter tenants, don't just let cooler heads prevail and make sure you're making the right decision. Think about what I just told you about the force majeure from a national tenant side. They're renegotiating their deal with you, essentially. They're trying to exit the lease or renegotiate it, whatever it might be, and whatever that force majeure clause says in the lease, they're doing. That doesn't mean that you as a landlord are helpless with other tenants. If, as we have some clients who have bought plazas that don't have leases that are in their favor, this is an opportunity now to get them into a lease. The guy's going to come back to you, and let's say he's got 4 or 5 year options without any rent increases. This is an opportunity for you to perhaps go back and say, well, let me get you into my lease, and your lease now only has 1 5-year option, not 2 5-year options, and it might have some rent increases or whatnot. You have to be careful about this, because people might see as being piggish, and it might end up having creating bad blood with your tenant. You don't want to do that right now. But at the same time, you want to make sure that, you're on solid ground too. And maybe it's just an issue of getting some consistency in your lease. And that's more than fair if he or she, your tenant, are going to be asking for concessions from you, that you can ask for a concession and maybe have a new lease on your standard template done. Okay, so we've talked about Beth Azor, and we've talked about the form that she had that kind of makes them talk about the process. let's talk about what happens and what you can do when somebody actually comes to you. They've completed the form and they want to get a rent abatement. Is it your responsibility to discount or give them free rent? No. Try to figure out a way. Look at the ask that they're asking you for. Some of this might be very reasonable. And what we've seen very reasonable, I need a 50% rent reduction for the next 2 months. Okay, fine. What the landlord has responded, which the tenant has accepted, to extend the lease for another 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, whatever. And after a period of time, the rent will be paid back. That's been abated, the 50% that will be abated. Let's say you wait a 6-month period for the people after they are able to get their business back in order to distribute those reductions over a period of several months, so they're not having to absorb it all at one time after they've had a chance to build their business back. So this is very reasonable, right? Your guys aren't out anything. It might take, you might be delayed a year or so. But you're not going to be out anything, and you're able to retain the cash flow budgets that you guys had done. So that's something that's very reasonable. So let's say you've come to an agreement also, or maybe you get the form back and the tenant's looking to you only to provide relief, and they're not really doing a lot on their own. Try to work with them and say, let's how about if you're a restaurant, curbside pickup? I know in the state of Florida, they just closed at restaurants indoors, and it's all curbside now or delivery. Make sure they understand those things. Maybe you can give them a few more parking spots, because now there's some other folks that maybe aren't attending, to be able to get them to go in there and increase that business. Because maybe that's all they can do is now drive through and curbside. So try to figure out there's ways for you to do that and handle that business and increase what little they're doing right now. But this is another option. We've seen folks say, well, look, we're going to apply the deposit to your next month, and then we're going to distribute that deposit. You're going to pay us back over the next X number of months when you get back in business. That's an option. Again, you're going to know your tenants better than others. I'm not sure that's the best option, and I certainly wouldn't do this if the tenant was delinquent. But if you got a good tenant and that's their suggestion, I'm not sure that I would say no to that. And you can kind of work back through the deposit for them. You can work through that later with them. So those are a couple of ideas about how to handle this situation. Communication is the most important thing. I am interested in hearing if you guys have some other creative ways to be able to work a tenant through this. They're asking for some sort of deferral. Send us an email. Go on the website, theinvestfloridashow.com, and let us know some of the creative ways you're working with your tenants to try to keep their heads above water in this period. Maybe make them feel good about what they're doing. You guys send us these types of things, and we'll read them and share them with everybody else. Again, guys, this is important. It's all about the communication and with your tenants and your bank and everybody at this time, to let them know what's going on. This is the way you avoid surprises. It's that relationship that you forge in periods of time like this that really end up to be lasting. So don't see it. It's scary, and there's a lot of very negative things going on, but there's very human things that come out of these types of crises too. And don't miss those opportunities to form bonds and relationships with people. If you are interested in receiving the SBA and the state of Florida links and some other ideas that tenants might have getting some help besides you, or you would like Beth Azor's form that she's asking tenants to fill out, send me an email. My email address is Eric, that's Echo Romeo India Charlie, at ROI, as in return on investment, real estate. And there's a dot in between real and estate. There's no .com. So it's Eric at ROI.real.estate. Send me an email. Send me your thoughts on what your guys are doing creatively with your tenants that you're working with. Maybe some other things that we missed here that you thought should have been covered. I want to share as much information as I possibly can. A lot of people have been helping us, and we want to pass on and pass it down the line and make sure that everybody is getting good ideas on how to operate their investment properties right now. So we're happy to share that information. give us a call. If you're needing any kind of, we had one of our clients that we've been doing some leasing for, but he managed his own properties, has 15 or 20 leases that he's not got in any kind of form. He's worried about the legalese with force majeure and some other things. So we're doing some tenant abstractions, which is lease summaries for them to put them in an order and give him some bullet points of how to look through it, because he had bought the plaza and then had his own lease, and he's manipulated those leases. And he's got half of them are old leases. Some of them are from multiple years ago. So we're able to put him and help him get those into some sort of easy, readable format so that he understands what to deal with, what the insurance clauses are, and if there's a force majeure, how that force majeure reads, and get it to him in sound bites so he's not having to read a 35-page document. Anyway, guys, be safe. I know that's cliche, but take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. Meditate. Do some of the things that can help protect your mental health. You're going to need it. We're all hopeful that this is going to be over sooner rather than later. I refuse to go and take myself to a dark spot that this is 18 months, 2 years out. I refuse to believe the worst case scenario. There are things that are being done that might mitigate this in a shorter period of time than most of the press is being reported. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I just don't think it's valuable to go to a dark spot and remain there. You've got to remain somewhat optimistic and positive for you and your people around you and your tenants. And you have to keep yourself healthy mentally. So be kind to yourself, sleep, meditate, get good, balanced meals, and try to, when you can, get out and stretch your legs and get some sunshine. It's all healthy and good for your mental outlook. Guys, we care about you. We appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every week. We will continue to give you updates as they're available and suggestions and ideas. Until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odum and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.